Hello and welcome to another episode of the DJ Project Criterion Collection. And here we're going to talk about Spine 337, Amours, directed by Maurice Pialat, 1983. Now typically when I get interested in a Criterion title, just to check it out and actually go out of my way to purchase it, it tends to fall into one or three categories, and sometimes it can be combined. One, it's based on someone or something I already know, or it's something that will help expand my palette and my cinematic understanding. So I try to go for a particular director or a particular style or a particular country or what have you, just to kind of see what's out there. And then the third are character studies. So any kind of story where character is the emphasis, I tend to like. And for the past several years, I've been personally interested in characters, and I can't really pin down exactly why. Maybe it's in large part because there aren't a lot of current films that deal in character. More often than not, films tend to satisfy a particular story or genre convention, or it's part of a franchise. But there are not a lot of character-driven films, and I'm interested in seeing those. And some of what I've written ended up being character-driven films, and as my attempt to try to fill that void. Hopefully it could be successful. Hopefully I can pull this off, but until that time, I do these, which is not bad. There's worse things you can do with your time. But anyway, so this particular film is a character study, and we look at Suzanne, played by Sandrine Bonnaire, and this was actually the film that helped launch her acting career. She's a 15-year-old Parisian. She is sexually aware and has this little sexual odyssey that's it's not played up for smut value, and that's not really the point. It's just, I think it's just one of those conditions of life, and I think it's been commented that it is kind of a comment on the kind of sexual liberty that's there in French culture, and that it's may not be the best thing. It doesn't outright condemn it, but it doesn't overtly praise it either. So so if you think this is just going to be nothing but again, this is not pornography, but if you think it's just going to be wall-to-wall sex, that's not it. It's just that she's very willing to sleep with anybody whom she thinks is worth her time at that particular moment. Well, while she's doing that, there is a part of her that wants love and is not entirely sure where it is, or if she does, she's afraid to admit to it. So it's the usual first 15-year-old conflicts that you find, whether you're in Paris or not. And then finally, she has a very, she has a very intense family upbringing. She has a brother who is quite brutish. In fact, there's a kind of incestuous power play with him, or he comes off as that. Again, it's not in an overt way, but there's some hints in the actions and so forth. Whether it was deliberate or not, I'm not entirely sure. We have a mother who's ineffectual and comes off as a bit hypochondriac-like. And then you have a father who's both very overbearing and very affectionate all at the same time. And he's played by Pialat himself. And so it's all these things informing it. And there's no there's no real narrative to speak of, except it's just one moment falling to the next. Actually, it's one not even really one moment falling to the next. It's just one moment, and then there's another moment, and often that creates some narrative holes where you're not sure where you are in the timeline and what exactly has happened. But really, it's more, it's less about the narrative and more about the emotion. And that's being portrayed from one moment to the next. And it's not really about, and maybe there's some slight progression, but it's a bit more natural as opposed to, this is not a case where Suzanne becomes mature. If anything, you get the sense that she's going to just continue on the path that she's going after you learn a bit about who she is, and even then it's more of an impression rather than anything really concrete. Pialat has been the label that's been attributed to Pialat is that he's the French Cassavetes, and that actually makes sense. Now, I do not own the Cassavetes box set, but I have seen it, and so I can understand what that would mean to have the French Cassavetes. But very briefly, Cassavetes, as a director, was really interested in films that were that were also more character driven, and he was particularly fascinated with moments that an actor didn't really anticipate. You have the scenario, you have the setup, but then you do a take, or you get yourself into a place, or you push the actor into a place where you haven't really experienced before, and it's just exploring the acting and the emoting possibilities, and trying to get into something a little bit more genuine rather than following a stock narrative. Or if you do follow a stock narrative, it's more of a springboard to then do other things. That's probably the best way to describe Cassavetes. And I can see this applied to Pialat. Now, this is the only Pialat film that I've seen. I had not seen his others. And actually, there was another title I was interested in getting, L'Enfance Nue. But I don't know why I chose. I think I chose this one just because it's considered perhaps one of his best films, and I figured that would be a really good introduction into that respect. So, so I guess I would recommend it too as a good introduction to Pialat. But something that strikes me about Pialat was that the way first off, he started into film way late in his life. Prior to that, he was known as a painter. And I find that going from painting to film can either work or it can't work. And this is a case where it does. And perhaps it has to do with a sensitivity to color and motion, which actually is kind of interesting because painting is more still. But even so, it's about having that tableau just radiate, and here this is all emotion. It's raw and not particularly well, it comes off as not sculpted. I think there was some effort and drive, and it did, but it probably took a ways to get there. But there was some care to it, but at the same time, there's also a feeling of freshness. In fact, there are two moments in the film that are really quite memorable. One is there's a moment where Suzanne is talking with her father. She had stayed out late, and her father is up and notices this and sort of scolds her, but it also leads into a very genuine heart-to-heart talk. And there's a moment in the conversation where he points out that she only has one dimple, and he comments that he wants to know where the other dimple is, and she responds that the other I don't know, she doesn't know where the other dimple went to. Maybe it just got up and left. And actually, that little moment was improvised on his part, and actually that was something that he noticed in Sandrine Bonnier. She did, when she was young, she did actually have two dimples, and now she just has the one. And it's just that little moment that is quite genuine. It's quite touching. It's probably one of the most touching moments that you can find. Certainly, it's one of the touching moments in the film, and perhaps even one of the most touching moments you can find in any film. Just that kind of exchange, and just the way that she smiles, and it conveys some sweetness and maybe some slight embarrassment, but it has a lot, and it comes off as really nice. Then there's another moment which I won't give off, but if you've seen the film, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's towards the end, and it's completely unexpected, and you can see it in everybody's face. And also, as the scene plays out, it throws everybody off guard. And it's another one of those memorable moments, certainly of the film, and perhaps that you would find in any film. And so yeah, this is a film where it's pretty much all emotion, and there's no holds bars. There's no real restraint. It doesn't go into parody. I think again there is a certain intensity to it, but instead of it being tempered, I think it just allows it to be without over baking it, and it just pulsates. I guess that's probably the best way to describe it. Is that it's there, and it's ever present, and it pulsates, and you can feel the raw energy, and you're not entirely sure where it stems from. Is it good direction? Is it just the moment in time, the moment in space? Whatever it is, it seems to work, and you would think that it doesn't, but I think that's the reason why it does work, and you can forgive the gaps in the narrative. But then again, the whole point is not necessarily a narrative. It's just more of and not even really. Maybe it's all a moment in time, but really it's just. I think it is more about a moment in time. Come to think of it. Where it's where this woman is at emotionally more than anything else. It's her coming to terms with herself and what she wants, and how does that affect her other relationships. And so that's what makes it really, really interesting. So definitely if you're interested in character studies, and definitely if you're interested in just seeing unbridled emotions, and there are a lot of little moments where, particularly when the family is all arguing amongst themselves, there's lots of slaps, there's lots of shouting and pushing and insulting, and it's just this emotion that just explodes and pulsates, and you can just kind of feel the radiation of emotion, and but it's not terribly exhausting. It doesn't feel exhausting. It's just really, really intense. And again, I think it's a really good introduction to Pilat. And since this was the first Pilat film to be put on Criterion, I've noticed this pattern too. Usually with a film where a director is there for the first time, usually the first films is usually where you get a lot of the intro stuff. So any supplements where there's a biography about him or anything that can help establish some context in his greater career, so you can get an idea of who he is and what he's all about. Then that's actually a good place to start. The other film that I was thinking about getting, La Enfance Nue, was actually his first film, and that one was, as I remember, it's the most autobiographical. It has a lot of things that happens to this character has actually happened to him, or was drawn from his life. But yeah. So, but either way, I will definitely recommend. Of course, I tend to recommend most titles I talk about, but I would especially recommend it if you are interested in more character studies and seeing characters exist in a cinematic space rather than a straightforward story, or if you just want to take a little bit of a break from watching a particular cinematic convention. It's a good little refresher. So there you go. A nos amours. And until next time, take care.